Ramona Flowers has 7 evil exes, all of whom you must defeat in order to date her.
What a wacky and weird show. And you know what? I love it. Full of cameos and fun references in all shapes and sizes, Scott Pilgrim is a story that has traversed the many mediums of storytelling to spread its influence to all. From graphic novel to live-action movie to video game to now an anime, only there is a catch. Because for being an adaptation of the comics, according to Netflix, man does this thing take off. And it was right in front of us the whole time. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. Okay, people say this show is false advertising, but calling it Scott Pilgrim Takes Off couldn't be more on the nose. Because Scott quite literally takes off for the majority of the show. Netflix made us believe that this was going to be a faithful adaptation of the source material. Because while the movie was still accurate, it was only a 2-hour movie released even before the graphic novels had finished. So what we thought was this was going to be their new full version of the story. Making it into an anime was the greatest idea ever. Because the graphic novels were heavily inspired by shonen manga, this was a match made in heaven. The movie was incredible, perfect some might even say, and many thought that this anime would take that story to the next level and explore all of the character moments that were unfortunately left out of the movie due to time restraints. Based on the first episode, things were looking up in that direction. Seeing these scenes now in a different medium, with the fun art and animation, they're setting up the story nicely, things are going well, Scott dates Ramona, the evil exes get ready, Matthew Patel shows up at the concert and Scott returns his punch, it's all going great, and then boom, Scott dies. Now, for me, I noticed something was up, but I wasn't fully aware that we were completely going off book with this one. I figured they just added some extra things to fill up that runtime, 8 30-minute episodes, and we'd probably find Scott in maybe the second or third episode. Patel then goes on to challenge Gideon Graves to win everything he has, and then he beats him. What is going on? For some reason, I still hadn't clued in yet, and then Ramona goes off to look for Scott and faces Roxy on her own, and that's when I kind of realized, wait a minute, this is not the same thing at all, is it? And that's when I realized by episode 4 that this wasn't just Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, it was Scott Pilgrim Takes Off and Ramona Takes Over. And you know what? I honestly really enjoyed it. The show doesn't feel anything like it did in episode 1 anymore, and that's not entirely a bad thing. I'm not completely on board yet, not that I'm off the board, it's just like, I'm still like, okay, what is going on here? But I'm still really enjoying myself. Instead of being a show about Scott fighting the evil exes to be with Ramona, it's now a show about Ramona playing detective visiting her exes to find where Scott Pilgrim is. Scott weirdly doesn't show up until the ending scene of episode 6, I think it was. And I will be honest, even though I love the stuff with Ramona, I still did really miss Scott. I'll just say that. And then revealing that this was an alternate timeline was definitely an interesting twist. So basically what it is the movie or the graphic novels, but I'm pretty sure it's the movie because of the movie in the show. Anyway, we're going to say the movie. The movie is the actual timeline. And in the future of that timeline, Ramona wants to take a break with Scott for a bit, and then Scott takes that really hard and makes a time machine and goes back to kidnap present Scott in that fight at the concert so that he stops him from fighting the evil exes to stop past present Scott from dating Ramona. Hence, Scott's disappearance and fake death at the battle with Matthew Patel. And then present Scott from the show, goes back in time with future Ramona to continue his journey fighting the evil exes to date present Ramona. But because of all this stuff with Ramona and everything, in the present timeline, none of the exes are really worried about it anymore. They're kind of not evil. They're just the exes, not the evil exes. Anyway, now further into the future, Scott, having trained for 10 years, and is now basically just the Hulk, fights everybody in what I'm assuming is like a pocket dimension or something. I don't know. Then further into the future, Ramona shows up and tells Scott that he just initially overreacted because she didn't want to break up. She just wanted to go on hiatus for a bit. Then she joins with present Ramona and they become like this higher life form. Then she sends further into the future Scott back into his future/present. And then they break the AK fields, stopping her from kissing present normal Scott. The really simple storyline wraps up there. And bingo, it's really weird. But to be honest, I quite enjoyed it. There was maybe a little bit of initial disappointment in it not being an adaptation of the original source material, but still pretty good. But the end result was still a lot of fun, so it's okay. Kind of reminds me a bit of Sorry, but Evangelion spoilers here in 3, 2, 1. It reminded me a bit of how the rebuild of Evangelion first presented itself as a reboot and then revealed to be kind of a sequel in that way, and kind of all just mind-boggling stuff that you're like, okay, what is going on here? Anyway, no more Evangelion spoilers. The story of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is very, very different. But because it just owns that ridiculousness, it's just a blast. The original cast is, of course, back to do some voice acting here, and they do a really good job. Voice acting is a completely different beast from on-camera acting, and they pretty much nailed it. The voices feel as natural as they did in the movie, so that's a plus. And paired with the really fun animation, it was a great part of the show. Speaking of animation, it is honestly so good here. Edgar Wright, the director of the movie Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, was an executive producer on this as well, and it really shows that he had some form of creative influence on this series. Even in the animation, his quick and rapid style of editing and shot compilations are so noticeable here as well. The art style is, of course, amazing, and because it's the art in the comics, right, which was a cool combination of manga and also Western cartoons, and this anime brings that to the forefront beautifully. And speaking of bringing things to the forefront, if you love anime or tokusatsu, then there's no better time to bring your cursors over to those beautiful subscribe and like buttons. It really makes an impact. Anyway, the character designs are great, and the colors are so vibrant and explosive. I also love that pretty much, I think, every episode starts with Ramona dyeing her hair different colors, always looking somewhat disappointed until the final episode where she finds a combination she likes and then she smiles afterwards. That was a nice touch. And back to Edgar Wright, these sequences are a perfect example of his frantic style of editing. I'm still so intrigued by how well the team brought his style over across from live action into an anime medium. Also, the music from the score to the lyrical songs are all great, all the way from just fun to purely emotional. The opening is also a complete bop, just want to say that. There are also a plethora of really fun references here as well. I'm not going to be breaking down every single reference in the show because I've most likely missed as many as I've caught. I guess that'll be the fun of the rewatch. But I will talk about a couple of my favorites. Some references the comics have already made, and some are completely original to the show. First of all, I just want to say, love all the vegan jokes, especially in the movie, and they all don't stop here. It's amazing that Todd's vegan powers are basically just him being a Super Saiyan. Super vegan. Vegan Saiyan. Anyway, also bringing it back to Evangelion, there are a bunch of references to that in here as well. My favorite being the crucial moment in the series results from an AT field, or I guess what they call an AK field. It's great. The director of the in-universe movie, Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life, which we assume to be what the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World movie is directed by none other than Edgar Wrong. See what they did there? Because Edgar Wright, and Edgar Wrong, because right and wrong. It's funny. Anyway, Edgar Wrong is also designed after Edgar Wright's actual looks as well. And with Edgar Wright back, they just couldn't stay away from having some cameos in here as well. Because it's official now. The Cornetto trilogy is now a trilogy of movies plus one anime. Because that's right, Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are back as security guards. And they eat ice cream in the scene. Cornetto ice cream? I also loved the whole subplot with, Gideon Graves, or I guess Gordon Goose. And of course, him just watching anime all day was great. I can relate.
Oh. Do they even like each other? Because sometimes it feels like they hate each other.
This is season 12. I can loan you the DVDs if you want the backstory.
Accurate. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is definitely not what any of us were expecting. There were times where I was completely on board and times where I was taken aback a bit by just how unexpected everything was, but I never didn't like any of it. I, in fact, loved pretty much all of it. And as much as I missed Scott, I equally loved seeing Ramona in the lead here. And it was also just really, really funny throughout the whole thing. But of course, those are just my thoughts. And what about you? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What is your favorite version of Scott Pilgrim of everything we've gotten? Thanks for tuning in. I've been Shin Glassman, along with one more call to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.